You've probably heard about it a lot because people are pretty upset, but I want to go over this labor market job revision that we saw, what happened, what it means, and why it's actually probably not as bad as you think. The labor market added 818,000 fewer jobs than earlier reported. Here is what experts say that actually means. And to be clear, this is not good. This is the largest revision we've ever seen in the last 15 years. And to get it off by this much is bad, borderline pathetic. But it's also not a conspiracy, which I see a lot of media outlets more on the conservative side suggesting that this is some kind of a plot or a ruse by the Biden administration to have made his numbers look better. So before we get into that though, and why that's not the case, let's see some details. The US job market wasn't as strong as it appeared to be in much of 2023 and early 2024, according to a new government revision of job data. Employers added 818,000 fewer jobs in the 12 months ended in March 2024 than were originally reported. The Bureau of Labor Statistics said Wednesday job growth averaged 174,000 a month in the year that ended in March, a drop of 68,000 a month from the 242,000 jobs that were initially reported. The revised data comes after July's weak employment report that sparked concerns the U.S. economy would be cracking under the highest interest rates in 23 years. The downward revision adds evidence of a slowing labor market and could reinforce the Fed's plans to start cutting interest rates soon, economists said. The labor market appears to be weaker than originally reported, noted Jeffrey Roach, chief economist for LPL Financial, in an email. A deteriorating labor market will allow the Fed to highlight both sides of the dual mandate, and investors should expect the Fed to prepare for market cuts in the September meeting. Now, after this number came out, that 818,000 job downward revision, Trump started tweeting out on his Truth Social platform that this was a massive fraud that was happening and that the Biden administration had fudged these numbers and the BLS was in the Biden administration's pocket, and so on and so forth. And this led to a lot of conservative personalities to attack Biden over these allegedly fake Bidenomics-based numbers. But I want to be clear about one thing before I get into the criticisms of that argument. A 1 million job revisions is unbelievable, and there is no world in which we, with our current knowledge and technology, should be off base by almost a million jobs. I understand it's complicated and revisions will always happen, but to be off by this amount when we have the capabilities we do is absolutely awful. But as for the actual claim that the BLS is cooking the books in Biden's favor, I think that line of thinking doesn't actually pan out. And I want to talk about three main reasons that that is actually the case, with the first being that this job revision actually happens every year with no clear trend of it favoring one president over the other. And you can actually see these job revisions for yourself here on this website, where they have archived every revision in PDF form since 2002 when they started doing these revisions. And while this is one of the largest ones, it is not the largest one. And this has happened every year since these reports have been tracked, again, starting in 2002. And just to prove further that it doesn't favor one president over the other, I have actually graphed the changes in job reporting by presidency for Obama, Trump, and Biden. Under Obama, the BLS overreported 902,000, then in 2010 it overreported 374,000, and then it underreported 162,000, 424,000, 347,000, 667,000. As you can see, there were 4 straight years of underreporting by the BLS under the Obama administration. Then they overreported again, then they overreported again, for a total over-reporting. If you basically all jobs canceling out, all over and under-reporting canceling out, they over-reported 556,000 jobs during the entire Obama administration, and here is that graph. And then during the Trump administration, they underreported by 138,000, then overreported by 16,000, underreported by 514,000, then underreported by 250,000. Excuse me, I had that backwards. But in total, they had to revise down their reporting of the Trump administration by 642,000, meaning they overcounted by 642,000 jobs during the Trump administration, which, if you can see the numbers, is actually more than they overreported during the Obama administration. So in 4 years, they got it more wrong under Trump than they did in 8 years under Obama. And you can see that graphed here, where here they had to revise it up, and then for the next 3 years they had to revise it down by close to 1 million jobs. And now we get to Biden, which is actually the most accurate presidency that we've had thus far. They had to revise it up by 374,000 the first year, revise it up by 568,000 the second year, then revise it down by 266,000, meaning they overcounted, then down again with this most recent report by 818,000 for a total downward revision, or an overcounting during Biden's entire administration of 142,000, which is again high. But if you think about the close to 10 million jobs that they have counted during this entire administration, to be off by 142,000 is not actually that much. And most notably, it is the least amount that they have been off, with them being most off by Trump by 642,000. And I want to make one point extremely clear. Almost nobody cared or batted an eyelash when in the first 2 years they had underreported by, you can see down here, 942,000 jobs. And then in the second 2 years, when they overcounted by almost exactly 1 million jobs, everyone loses their mind. In the first 2 years, there was a miscount of 1 million. Nobody cared. In the second 2 years, there's a miscount of 1 million. And then you have all these conspiracies flying saying that the BLS is cooking the books in Biden's favor to try and help the Dems win re-election. When really, it's not. Obviously, that's not the case. So that's the first reason. It's probably not intentional or a conspiracy to make them look good, because they were off by 1 million in the first 2 years, and then they were off the other direction by 1 million in the second 2 years, effectively canceling out to only being off by 142,000 during his entire administration. The second reason that I don't think this is some kind of a conspiracy to help the Dems win the election is because of interest rates. See, the Fed didn't lower interest rates because the jobs were overcounted. Had they been properly counted and we saw the job growth slowing sooner than it actually was, the Fed probably actually would have lowered the interest rates, which would have made housing cheaper for more people sooner than it's going to be. At the moment, we're pretty sure the Fed's going to lower interest rates in September, and that will only be 3 months of lower rates under the Biden administration. But if they had lowered it back in July during their meeting, which they probably would have done if we had had accurate job data showing 1 million fewer jobs than we previously expected, then probably they would have lowered it in July, which would have given from July all the way to the November election of lower interest rates. That would allow people to be able to buy houses and notice their friends and family being able to buy houses as well. Housing prices going down and being more affordable because of lower interest rates would have looked really good on the Biden administration. But that straight up did not happen because we had overcounted jobs and thought the labor market was continuing to be hotter than it actually was. And as a result of that, this can't possibly be a conspiracy for the Biden administration, because probably it actively and slightly hurt the Biden administration that this overcount even happened. The third reason that I don't believe this is any kind of conspiracy is that if it was a conspiracy, either the government, one, wouldn't have actually corrected the numbers and would have said they got it right, or two, the BLS would have said that the numbers were only off by a little bit. As it was, they basically admitted to getting the numbers the most wrong they had since 2009, or the last 15 years. That's probably accurate if they admitted to miscounting by such a huge margin. And for those of you worried that, well, they got it wrong once, they could get it wrong again, or they lied once, maybe they're lying again about this too, and it's actually worse than that, private companies actually keep track of this kind of thing as well. And they predicted roughly the same amount of jobs being removed. This is from The Hill. Experts were bracing for a sizable annual revision. The Economist at Goldman Sachs forecasted a decline of up to 1 million jobs. The investment bank and Wells Fargo ultimately expected the preliminary benchmark revisions to be at least 600,000 jobs weaker than previously estimated, while JPMorgan Chase forecasters expected a decline of about 360,000. This is why we can probably expect that these numbers are accurate. It's because the private companies, which have a vested interest in knowing how the economy is doing, so they know about bank loans, potential interest rates, and everything else that banks do, they estimated that the job revision would be pretty close to what it actually was, from basically 600,000 to 1 million, with JPMorgan Chase absolutely missing the ball, but that happens. So because private expectations from private companies came in at about the same as the public expectations and the government revisions, we can pretty much assume that these revisions are actually accurate. Now, to be clear, there are lots of things worth criticizing the government for, and I will criticize them for almost every one of them that is relevant to me and my channel, but criticizing the government for revising employment data like they've been doing for 21 years is simply not one of them. Thanks for watching.